I love my wife and we've been together for years and I've always felt that she was mine. I was wrong. She was clumsy and could have done something wrong, and it was thanks to this that I learned a very terrible secret, after which my life turned upside down into before and after. Now I'll tell you. I believe many men discover their wife's infidelity through inconvenient timing, overheard conversations, or finding evidence. In my case, it was peculiarly straightforward. My wife unintentionally emailed me about her affair. Joyce likely selected my name from the suggested recipients, unaware of the mistake. The email, titled "About Yesterday," expressed sentiments I'd never used, making the betrayal glaringly obvious. Rather than confront her immediately, I chose a logical, methodical approach. Considering the potential denial or alternative explanations, I decided to wait, intrigued to see if Joyce would realize the error. If not, at least I'd be forewarned for her next rendezvous. Observing her closely, I found her behavior normal upon returning home, showing no signs of recognizing the mistake. Throughout the evening, I refrained from hinting at any issue, maintaining routine. However, as we went to bed, sleep eluded me, and the potential betrayal weighed heavily. Contemplating every angle, I acknowledged the possibility of innocence, fearing I might damage our marriage. Despite my efforts to control emotions, the pain of potential betrayal lingered. After much thought, I concluded that deferring the issue until I had more accurate information was my only option. Fortunately, I could manage this. The next morning, I resumed analysis, deciding that the upcoming Wednesday might provide answers. Taking action, I contacted a detective agency to surveil Joyce that Wednesday. If her actions seemed normal, it wouldn't fully ease my fears, but it would provide some relief. On the other hand, if my fears were justified, at least I would know the truth and could begin taking appropriate action. Having exhausted my immediate options, I embraced the waiting game. I pushed aside the letter and resumed work. The following Wednesday seemed ordinary, with Joyce and me working and returning home together. Her appearance and behavior showed no signs of abnormality. In my study, I tried to conceal any anxiety while reading Edgar Allan Poe's stories. On Thursday, I met with the detective agency to learn the surveillance results. Despite my emotional reserve, I sensed something amiss when the detective avoided eye contact. My fears were confirmed. Joyce was observed leaving her workplace and meeting a man at a motel near the airport. The provided photos captured them entering a room at 1:52 p.m. and leaving hand in hand 2 hours later. The detective expressed his regret, and I contemplated my next move. Realizing the motel was their regular meeting spot, I asked if they could capture evidence from inside the room. The detective agreed, mentioning potential costs for the motel manager's cooperation. Returning to my office, I struggled to focus. With doubts removed, my ability to think seemed compromised. Abandoning work, I concentrated on the revelations. Wiping my eyes, I started planning. Besides confirming Joyce's infidelity, I understood why she mistakenly sent the letter. Her lover was our neighbor, Ronald Bradshaw. As Robert Bishop, my name likely popped up when Joyce typed the first 2 letters in the email program. Despite our friendship, I hadn't noticed sparks between Joyce and Ronald. The betrayal intensified, and I contemplated various courses of action. Revenge fantasies and scenarios of pleading with Joyce played out in my mind. Eventually, I decided on a dual action plan: divide and conquer. The first part involved using my knowledge of Joyce and Ronald to drive a wedge between them, potentially stopping their relationship. Simultaneously, the second part comprised an all-out campaign to win back Joyce's love by becoming the perfect husband. It was time for me to reveal the downsides of Joyce's relationship with Ronald. I aimed to showcase the advantages of reuniting with me. Planning out each step meticulously, I created detailed notes, outlining the timing and interdependency of my campaign. A key element was ensuring they remained unaware of my knowledge about their affair, demanding restraint on my part. I knew how to conceal my emotions and was confident in my ability to execute this. Although I awaited another report from the detective agency before launching my full campaign, there were preparatory steps I could take. I invested in a recording system for our home phones and a hidden voice-activated recording device in Joyce's car, effectively closing off communication. While I couldn't tap her cell phone, I reasoned that her car was the likely place for calls to Ronald. My next move involved gaining access to Joyce's email. Armed with her passwords, I set up copies of all messages to be forwarded to my address. Discovering that their affair was relatively short-lived, I aimed to end its honeymoon stage quickly. Subsequently, the detective agency surprised me with not only photos, but also video and audio of Joyce and Ronald's intimate moments. Despite the unexpected display of affection between them, I remained resolute in my plan. Aware of Joyce's impatience and aversion to disappointment, I planned to exploit these weaknesses. Simultaneously knowing her romantic nature, I saw an opportunity for another facet of my intervention. Having copies of all her letters provided me with an advantage in planning my intervention program. As their next exchange of letters unfolded, providing crucial details about their meeting, I seized the opportunity to intervene. On the day of their scheduled rendezvous, I discreetly tampered with Joyce's car tire while she was at work, causing her to seek my assistance. Offering to help with her car trouble, I delayed my departure strategically, ensuring I wouldn't arrive until nearly the scheduled time of her meeting with Ronald. Meeting with Ronald, she impatiently waited by her car. I apologized for the delay, explaining that it took longer than expected. As she paced in frustration, I strategically changed her tire, preventing her from leaving until I was done. Though it had been over an hour since she was supposed to meet Ronald, I apologized again, hoping it wouldn't impact her client relationship. She mentioned that Ronald would have to understand, and I sensed a resigned tone. While changing her tire, her phone rang multiple times, presumably Ronald calling. She checked it but avoided answering in my presence, confirming my suspicions later when I saw their agitated correspondence. After dinner, I surprised Joyce with a foot massage, an act she usually had to request. I explained I wanted to do something nice for her due to her challenging day. She questioned my intentions at first, but eventually relaxed on the couch, expressing pleasure through soft moans. I waited a week before taking the next step. On Monday, I had a large flower arrangement delivered to her office with a card expressing my appreciation for the best wife. She seemed surprised, but thanked me profusely. I confessed that I wanted to change, emphasizing the preciousness of her love. However, from her emails, I learned that the lovers planned to meet in a few days. Despite my desire to interfere, I refrained from messing up Joyce's car again, fearing it would be too suspicious. Instead, I discreetly followed her to the meeting place, maintaining a safe distance to avoid detection. While she entered the room Ronald had reserved, I pulled the fire alarm in the motel hallway, causing chaos. Observing from my office, I relished the frustration between the two lovers as they exchanged emails in the aftermath. Joyce seemed angry and frustrated, and Ronald echoed similar sentiments. My plan to disrupt their clandestine meeting was a success, leaving them agitated and thwarted. I'm truly sorry, but the fire hazard at that place is not my fault, Joyce. For future orders, choose a venue that isn't a fire trap. As she returned from work, I noticed Joyce was still upset. However, her mood shifted to surprise when she saw the dining table elegantly set with linen napkins and our fine china. The aroma of her favorite dish wafting from the stove added to her astonishment. With a playful smile, she asked, "Who are you and what have you done with my husband?" I modestly replied, "Nothing special, dear. I called your office this afternoon, and upon learning about your late client meeting, I decided cooking was the last thing you'd want to do." After dinner, determined not to let her help with the dishes, I walked her into the office and switched on my favorite TV show. As I returned to the kitchen, I sensed her eyes following me, realizing that my conquest campaign was progressing well. Despite Joyce's potential doubts about her affair, the intercepted letter from Ronald revealed his persistent pursuit. Annoyed at his persistence and regretful of Joyce's willingness to continue, I knew it was time for more decisive action. On the day before their planned meeting, I called the Hyatt Hotel reservations office, posing as Ronald Bradshaw. Claiming a last-minute issue, I canceled the reservation with satisfaction. Curious about the aftermath, I visited the Hyatt, concealing myself behind a newspaper in the lobby. Right on cue, the married duo appeared, only to discover their room was canceled. Ronald raged at the counter, demanding a new reservation, but the clerk informed them of the hotel's full occupancy. Joyce's embarrassment was evident, and she tried to pull Ronald away. I observed until they left, concluding my successful intervention. When Joyce returned home, I intercepted her at the door, announcing we were leaving. Before she could protest, I took her hand and guided her to my car, opening the door and maintaining my resolve. I got into the driver's seat and she asked about the purpose of our journey. I hinted at a surprise, turning on the radio to some soft music. As I drove in silence, she observed me with curiosity, trying to discern the nature of my plans. Her alarm was evident when we entered the Hyatt parking lot. "Why are we here?" she nervously questioned. With a wink, I replied, "You'll see." We took the hotel elevator to the top floor, finding ourselves in the rooftop restaurant with its rotating dome. I approached the head waiter, and upon mentioning my name, he led us to a table with a spectacular view of the city lights. "Why this place?" she asked suspiciously. I casually explained, "No particular reason, just thought it would be a wonderful setting for my pretty wife." While Joyce tensely smiled at my compliment, she inquired about securing a table, considering the reported convention in town. I assured her, "That's no problem. I called today and booked a table." Joyce, grateful for my consideration, relaxed. Her delight increased with the arrival of champagne and oysters on the half-shell. For the main course, the waiter served salmon niçoise salad with black olive sauce, impressing Joyce. "I thought you'd order something heavier, like a big steak," she remarked, smiling. I responded, "This is an ideal option. I know you love salads, baby. Besides, we don't want to get too full." The dessert, fresh raspberries with whipped cream and liqueur, was a perfect ending, thoroughly enjoyed by Joyce. On the drive home, Joyce, affected by the alcohol and oysters, seemed both upset and excited after her recent dating failures. Once home, I led her upstairs to our bedroom, suggesting she change into her nightgown while I attended to other preparations. I ensured everything was ready in the guest bedroom, where scented candles illuminated the open bed. Returning to Joyce, I was pleased to see she had chosen a sheer black nightgown. Leading her to the guest bedroom, I placed a sleep mask over her eyes, declaring that touch and smell would be the only senses needed. Undressing, I laid her down on fresh linen, inviting her to smell the almond oil. Starting with a foot massage, I gradually moved upward, focusing on her muscles, creating a relaxed and intimate atmosphere. I focused on her shoulders and arms initially. When I reached her toes, I gently rolled her onto her stomach, repeating the process up her back and massaging her buttocks and back. Turning her over again, I concentrated on her breasts, circling and manipulating without touching sensitive areas. After a few minutes, I moved back to her feet, running my fingertips up her inner thighs. Her moans turned into a long scream, echoed by my own grunts, until we both reached a climax. After coming to our senses, I removed the mask from her face. She seemed either unconscious or exhausted, so I carried her to the bedroom, covered her with a sheet, and she quickly fell asleep. After a quick sponge bath, I returned to bed, pleased with the night. Though our morning routines usually differed, she surprised me by preparing coffee and breakfast early. Expressing gratitude, she mentioned that the previous night was special for her. Despite this progress, I discovered an email suggesting Ronald's continued interest. Feeling a turning point, I sensed the need for immediate action. Intercepting her plans, I swapped her cell phone battery, allowing me to eavesdrop on her conversations. To divert her weekend plans with Ronald, I hatched a plan and made a strategic phone call. As the weekend approached, Joyce appeared dressed up, sparking curiosity about her choice of underwear. When I showed no intention of leaving for golf, Joyce grew anxious. Eventually, she asked about my plans and the doorbell rang. Miriam, Joyce's sister, surprised us, revealing I had invited her for the weekend. The unexpected turn of events left Joyce pleasantly surprised and me satisfied with the successful diversion. However, she quickly bounced back. I suggested helping Miriam take her bag to the guest room while Joyce changed. Joyce agreed, mentioning she would make a quick call. As she walked away, I heard muffled curses, and she returned with an unresponsive phone, frustrated by the dead battery. I sympathized, suggesting she could call her home phone, but she dismissed it, deeming the call unimportant. We shifted our focus to breakfast plans. Throughout the weekend, I worked hard to make my sisters feel comfortable. When Miriam prepared to leave on Sunday, she hugged me and expressed gratitude, calling me a special husband. Joyce, too, hugged me warmly, assuring Miriam that she would take good care of me. I noticed a slight wince from Joyce, but she eventually smiled and reassured Miriam. After Joyce went to bed on Sunday, I decided to check the recording device. I was confident that Joyce had found time to call Ronald over the weekend. Unconcerned, as I had a recording of the conversation, I discovered that the call took place early on Sunday morning. Ronald expressed frustration about Joyce's absence on Saturday and her unresponsive phone. Joyce apologized, explaining her sister's unexpected visit and her phone's dead battery. Ronald suggested she could have left on Saturday afternoon, but Joyce cited her sister's plans for the weekend. Their conversation amused me, and their evident frustration seemed like a significant blow to their relationship. I hoped it would be enough to shape its fate. Confirming my suspicions, Ronald's subsequent emails on Monday indicated their relationship was falling apart. Ronald questioned if they were still meeting, but Joyce replied negatively, stating that it was becoming too troublesome, and she felt guilty about her actions. Ronald expressed disappointment but hoped they could remain friends, though not with benefits. Satisfied that I had introduced enough problems to their relationship, I now aimed to complete the second part of my plan. When Joyce returned home that evening, she appeared gloomy and absent-minded. Sensing something was amiss, I cautiously inquired about her mood, wondering if she had work-related issues or hormonal fluctuations. Joyce, without looking at me, attributed it to a bad mood and possible hormonal factors. Though I gave her space, inwardly, I couldn't help but revel in the belief that she was mourning the end of her relationship with Ronald, despite it being her decision to terminate it. Regarding the affair, I sensed Joyce's emotional investment in relationships, making the end of our affair bittersweet for her. Although she appeared melancholic, I found her mood reassuring, confident that she had decided to put an end to it. Meanwhile, I cynically imagined Ronald's lack of emotional turmoil, assuming he was likely engaged with Bobby. The following day, Joyce's improved emotional state supported my belief that neither Ronald nor she had second thoughts. This fueled my growing sense of triumph, convinced that everything was unfolding according to my plan. That evening, as Joyce entered the study after dinner, I had Edgar Allan Poe's book on my lap. When she inquired about my reading choice, I mentioned The Cask of Amontillado. Her unfamiliarity with the story didn't deter her from expressing gratitude for being a wonderful husband. My heart soared at her words, realizing this was the opportune moment. Anticipating her next move, I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes, and she admitted feeling undeserving. Calmly, I reached for the desk drawer, unveiling photos of her rendezvous with Ronald. Initially confused, Joyce's shock intensified as she comprehended the damning evidence. Handing her a copy of the divorce petition, I affirmed there was no salvaging our relationship. Coldly interrupting her plea, I handed over additional documents, including a letter to Bobby and a detective's report, sent to her sister Miriam. Her pain and confusion erupted into sobs as she couldn't grasp the abrupt shift from my loving demeanor to apparent cruelty. I explained that her affair had extinguished my love, and my recent actions aimed to make her understand the magnitude of her betrayal. Before leaving, I placed the open Poe book atop the documents, highlighting the Montour family motto about not dishonoring me without consequences. Joyce collapsed on the sofa in anguish, and as a final touch, I marked the relevant passage for her to see.
How do you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Tell us what you would do if, God forbid, you found yourself in a similar situation. I believe that the man did the right thing. The main thing is to be happy, and people who betray must bear their punishment.